Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. We are going to go ahead and get started. And the only bill on our agenda today is House Bill 332. Everybody have a copy? And we have Chairman Martin here to explain this bill. And we're operating, if I understand correctly, Chairman Martin, is that we're operating off of LC 333083S. Is that right?
I'm sorry? Yes, we're LC 333083S.
Okay. If you would sort of explain the bill to us.
But basically, there exists a situation where young folks that are under the care of the Department of Juvenile Justice are sometimes counted, or oftentimes counted in the 10-day count or the count for local boards of education. In this past fiscal year, if all the monies for a whole year were added up for youth that are in the care of the Department of Juvenile Justice, it would have been about $5 million, a little over $5 million, that was given in the QBE formula to folks that didn't, in fact, continue to educate the young folks. What we simply want to do with this piece of legislation, this substitute, is allow the Board of Education to establish policies for local boards of education to reimburse the Department of Juvenile Justice for the QBE funds that are paid to the local boards, the state share of that. And the operative line here is DJJ is already being given money to educate these folks, so the Department of Juvenile Justice will remit these reimbursements to the state treasury so that they may be used in a manner so as not to double dip for these young folks that are in the custody of DJJ. We can get into, Mr. Chairman, they were there and then they were gone, then they're coming back, or other kids move in and out of state and the 10-day counts and the FTEs. So rather than for us in this language to try to put in statute or legislate the exact policy, we would be and have spoken, Misty Giles and folks with the Department of Juvenile Justice have spoken with the State Department of Education, and they are happy, given that they get to set and establish the policies, doing that, because it may not be a situation where they would school system would lose the entire FTE, but just a portion of it, something that would be fair to a school system, but to make sure that no one was taking advantage of a certain school system. Because if that happens, what inadvertently happens is school systems that have an inordinately high number of folks in DJJ are getting compensated at a greater rate, and the other counties in the system are under QBE, not just the counties, but the other systems, school systems that are under the QBE funding are getting shorted because of that. So we'd like to return that money to the state treasury just in terms of what it could do. It was about $5 million last year. I mean, we all know what that could do if you were to put it back into the formula overall, and spread that adequately, or to be used to work with the National Board Certified Teachers. It could be used to help reinstate the school nurses. I mean, there's not a track for it to go, but it's just the situation that school systems don't need to be double compensated for students that they are not being required to educate. Ask the committee's favorable consideration to move this forward.
DJJ is also a separate school board, right? Mm-hmm. That's my understanding. Well,
and again, they are being compensated for they are receiving funds for educating this. That's why the funds that they would get under this new policy and procedure would be remitted back to the state treasury and recognized as revenue to the state, so that it could be adequately and accurately spread over education.
Representative, is it Maxwell? 8.
Thank you, Representative Martin. I appreciate what you're trying to do. Yeah, can you hear me? I just have a real problem on how we're going to implement this. We're going to require the local boards of education to do something. I have no idea, coming off the board, how are they going to be notified that these kids have been incarcerated. That's just a, I got a black hole in my mind on how they're going to do that.
Well, after this week, Chairman Maxwell, I have several black holes in my mind not related to this, but I'll try to do that. You asked me that question before the meeting, and I appreciate it's giving me a little bit of time to think about the discussions I had with the Governor's Office and the Department of Juvenile Justice. The Department of Juvenile Justice know where these kids come from and would notify the State Board of Education and the local school systems. They know where when the children or the youth. I hate that.
Well,
the children.
They know where they were picked up from, probably, and what county they were processed. But do they know where they were actually enrolled in school? If they were enrolled in school at any given time? Because we're talking probably what if you got $5 million, you're around 10,000 students or so, roughly.
Yeah, yes, sir. The report I have, and I apologize, we're running today from the house to my meeting that's one floor up to over here. But I actually have a document that tracked. In fact, I only have one copy of it, but I could give to Chairman Maxwell if he'd like. This is how you could do it, because you can see that the department already knows from whence the students came, and that would be the report that the Board of Education could use as it developed its policy on where the students come from and where the money goes. So the information is available. And again, letting the board set the policy and establish policy doesn't mean that we are saying take the whole FTE away if someone is in short-term program. If someone's in the short-term program gone for 30 or 60 days, perhaps you don't take any of the FTE away. If someone is being incarcerated for one of the violent offensive categories and they may be away for a number of years, it may be a situation that the whole FTE needs to come out. One has to realize that as long as the student is in that address, the fact that they're not in school, that they would perhaps be counted even a second year as being registered for that school system, because they would be returning after their incarceration.
We do a count in October and March, so if they were there in the October count and not there in March, they're going to lose the FTE on the supplement, wouldn't they? Is that not how that works? And then if they were there in March and not there in October, so we're only looking at am I correct in how this is going to work? 6 months period? Which thing is that?
I'm not positive how they actually lay out the FTE equivalent, but that's why we have chosen in the language of the bill to allow the State Board of Education to look at the policy that they use to establish the quantity of for the full-time equivalent, and let them set a policy so that something that would be fair for the local system, so that they're not losing money that they should have, but that they are not getting double counted for students that they are not educating.
Mr. Chairman, could you give me clarification on that about the FTE counts?
That's my understanding as well. It may be better, and let me ask the author of the bill, rather than using the word requiring, it may be better to simply put in there instead of allowing for, so that to give the State Board of Education a little bit more wiggle room. In other words, instead of saying requiring local boards to reimburse, allowing for local boards to reimburse. In other words, give the State's Board of Education a little more flexibility. Would that be better? I'm doing this. I'm doing this a little bit on the fly. So
yeah, yes,
I'm asking.
You're an attorney, and I'm not. I think the establishment of the policies and procedures would allow the State Board of Education to establish a policy that, if one is there for the count in October and counted, but going to be gone for 60 days, and then back in November, the policy is you don't have to reimburse for that student. Your policy would be that you only reimburse for students that happen to be there on October 1 and were gone shortly after.
Yeah. Anyway, just
but if you are
yeah, that's what I'm asking. You may be right. I do have. I'm sorry. Let me get back on track with questions, and I was just throwing that out as I'm sort of sitting here reading it. First, Representative Amerson, and then we'll get to Representative Porter.
I have a couple of problems with this. The first being, can we in fact take money away from the school system at all? Because we have a hold harmless law that says that if the population goes down during the year, we can't take any money back. And that's just the general policy. So I'm not sure we can do this. I guess the second thing would have to do with if people are going to be gone more than the time from one count to the next, then they would automatically be taken out. And I guess my next one is that does this apply only to children who are in the juvenile justice system incarcerated in a fixed building, or is it part of their out? You know, they also have an outdoor program. They've closed 2 camps, I think, this year.
To answer your last question, Mr. Chairman, I think.
But the primary question is, can we legally tell the school system to reimburse us? I think Representative Porter or Christine or somebody can answer that one a lot better.
All right. Representative Porter.
I think you are held homeless. That's about where I am too.
We may be held harmless as
for
well.
that. And there are 2 times that the count is made,
Yeah.
and that's why you had the midterm adjustment. And the problem I got with juvenile justice, we've done away with so many options for the juvenile court. We just have done away with the 60-day program. So the options for the judge now is 30-day, keep him at home, or send him to the YDC. If they're at the YDC, they're going to not be picked up in the second count. And other than that, they're either in a suspension mode from the school, or the maximum that's allowed now for the juvenile court to give them is 30 days. So I can't think of a mechanism where this would ever trigger. And I hate to give the department the right to prorate something less than that. You'd spend more money trying to figure that out than you get back.
Well, this is something that had been talked about, through the governor's office, through the Department of Juvenile Justice, and I am told, I have not spoken with the superintendent directly, but I am told through the governor's office with the state superintendent that they would not support a program whereby we would legislate and tell them, if a child's not there, you shall give the full-time equivalent back. They would support a program where the State Board of Education would establish policies, whereby they would require local boards to do this. We're asking them to look at this and establish a policy for returning that money. We're not telling them at what point or at what percentage they need to do.
What I'm saying is, I don't think you can do that. I don't think that's the possible part because of the home harmless part. And other than that, there's the 2 counts. And if they're not in that count, then you're not on the allotment for the money. And the only time that you would not be on that count is if you're in the YDC itself, and then you'd be under the education program of the juvenile justice. And other than that, it would be a suspension or a maximum 30-day program. And
I wish we had had an opportunity to have Missy Giles from the governor's office here. And if I'm stating this and I'm incorrect, this way I understood it from her, that if someone was out of the system but was going to be returning to the school, that they may well be included in the second count because they were not moved to another school. They were never de-enrolled in that home school. I only had the one copy. Is it possible for me to get back to take a quick look at?
I understand that. Mr. Chairman, can I ask
You're going. We're going to go. Yeah, we'll come back to someone else. But Representative Rogers.
I just Dubose. Let me direct this to you. You probably know this. Why do we do only 2 counts a year? FTE. Right.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
Right after the fall, you do the other count. If that's what's adjusted by the midterm adjustment and the midterm budget.
Why couldn't we increase the number of counts?
Because
that's the reason I'm asking. I don't know.
and maybe this should get easier with technology and student numbers and all that.
Right.
But we're not there yet. I can't. One of the biggest problems we have had is the amount of money we have spent trying to develop this
That's some,
outrageous amount of money,
Yep.
and we still do not have a system that does it.
That's-
Now, if you ever come up with that that's easy to use, you can, but until then you can track it about any time.
But the FTE's been what? How long has it been only 2 counts a year for how long?
Since 85, right?
QBE, was that when the QBE was?
yeah.
Put QBE and finally had a formula that was weighted to let it travel with the student. That's when it did, and that's when you had the 2 counts. And that's when you had the one for enrollment and then the one
Right.
who actually showed up.
That's a question that's also come up during our committee meetings is
Okay.
how we can move to a system that provides for better accounting of the students. For just the reason we've been going through that with.
So, you mean she spent over $100 million. Never came up with a system.
We spent that much on Y2K, remember
I know
that?
she spent that on her makeup, Mr. Baker.
I mean, it really was just trying to get a student county system over $100 million. And then Kathy has tried it with Howard Footer, who was on loan from the university, and that's never been completed. That's
Ms.
not there yet. And until you get that, you never, then it wouldn't matter much, but you don't have that. So the other way to do that is through the paperwork that you're gonna make the system do, turn them in and get a third count. I don't know what that would do, but you have to make the count.
Let me make a suggestion. I have a budget meeting going on upstairs, and there's been several questions asked of me that I think could be answered by the governor's office and DJJ, and also by Betsy Howington, who drafted the legislation as to its applicability. Let me ask the subcommittee's indulgence that I get information on those questions. I think if it were a place where this bill was to move forward, I think Chairman Harmon wanted to hear it in the morning. But if I can get that information, perhaps Chairman Harmon offering time at the beginning of the full appropriations meeting, if I can get that information together for the subcommittee, because I can't, in good conscience, stand and give you answers to what Chairman Maxwell, Chairman Porter, and Chairman Amerson have asked. Can we really do this? I have been told that we can. You learned gentleman's been down here a long time. He says we can. I think it's only fair that, before I ask the subcommittee to move forward or not, is to have that answer. Also to have the answer of, when they're away, and they talk about 226 days for Appling County being in the, RYDCs, how would this actually translate? Or are we asking them to do that? And get some folks from the governor's office and DJJ before the subcommittee, before we ask you guys to go one way or the other. I'd be happy to do that. Well, yes, sir. These are for the county. This is not for one individual. See, I'm sorry. The way this report is, these are bed days in the RYDCs that were taken up with youth from Appling County. Okay, some of them might have been 30 days. Some of them might have been 60 days. Somebody might have been in there. May have only been 3 people, one for 180, and the other 2 that did the rest. So that's what I'm getting at. I don't think if we allow the state board to develop policy and procedure, we're going to recoup all $5 million that they're doing on a linear, recoup for full-time equivalents based on a proportionate days that they're in the RYDC. We're not going to realize this amount of revenue. Nobody's going to ding a school system if somebody's in a 30-day short-term program. I can't imagine anybody doing that. So what I'd like to do is have Ms. Giles from the governor's office explain, in detail what they're going to do about the fall count and the spring count in the interest of time before we would do anything with this.
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we do this? Why don't we do this? Because I think the questions being presented are good. I'm not sure if we can do it either. But according to, I have a lot of respect for Chairman Martin, and if he thinks that the governor's office can clear this up, I'm going to give him one more shot before the hearing tomorrow morning. And why don't we reschedule this for 8:30 tomorrow morning, before the main hearing, and we'll do it. And we'll do it in 341 at 8:30. We'll give the governor 30 minutes before we do the full hearing, And then if we
I'm
can,
just conducting this training.
and then if
Mr.
we,
Chairman.
you know, if we're convinced that there's something that we need to do, we can move it forward. If not, we can table it and we can move on to the committee, because I think there are
Look at it
four
again.
other bills already on that full committee at that time.
There was a system, and
Yeah.
DJK has had, through their cuts, they've reduced the programs for how long they'll take.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just happened. So a lot of the data you have is not going to
I hear you, and like I said, but let's give the governor's office and Chairman Martin, who I think has some, you know, he oversees this part of the budget on the DJJ side. So I'd like to give him one more shot, and we'll do it at 8:30. And if we don't feel like this can move, from what I understand, we have a full calendar tomorrow morning anyway with 4 bills. We'll move on.
Question who asked them, is I understand DJJ and DFAX have signed an agreement with DJ Walker's, what do you call it,
Yeah.
for their mental health deal, because they eliminated two of their outdoor camps.
Well, yeah. Well, let's see. I mean, I've got obviously some interest in DJJ as well. We'll see. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning at 8:30, and we'll see. And
Where you gonna meet at?
we'll meet at 3:14, 3:41. We'll just meet right before the full committee. And if the governor's got something he can convince us, great. If not, we'll move on. I think this is an idea. Reconvene tomorrow.